The night is cold, yet serene. A perfect time for a man to do some leisure drunk driving. It's not as comforting as it used to be, the driver thinks to himself. Time to add some variety to the creeping routine. Before he can listen to reason and flee the accident scene, the victim beats him to it and disappears first. The man feels cheated and confused. Looking for guidance, he talks to God, who gives him a flashlight from AliExpress and tells him to shoot some hikers after blinding them first. This pisses off a random tornado that chases him all the way to the lighthouse, making him question his choices of ever leaving the city and going outside. Howdy, I'm Spikazu, and today I will gaslight you into thinking I know what Alan Wake is all about, and I will share with you top secret trivia which I read on a wiki and remembered incorrectly. Alan Wake is an 8-hour-long horror game trapped inside a 13-hour-long action game. It tells a story of a writer, Alan Wake, who goes on holiday with his android wife, Alice. Since she is afraid of the dark and Alan wants to take a break from his career as world's famous author, they naturally decide to stay at a creepy cabin in the middle of a lake, surrounded by pitch-black forest, with no electricity due to all the fog machines working at the same time. While all three inhabitants of the nearby town are all big fans of Alan's writing and probably his feet as well.
Alan Wake? Oh God, I am your biggest fan.
Alice then seduces Alan by removing her pants and forcing him to get back to work and get therapy.
There's a local doctor. He specializes in helping artists.
Alan king-shames her and leaves the cabin in disgust, before he manages to write a lengthy rant on an MGTOW forum about how all women are a god's mistake. Alice screams for help and Alan rushes to her rescue.
Alice, I'm coming! It's all right, I'm coming!
That's how the story starts, and Alan has to solve the paranormal mystery surrounding the disappearance of his wife and his narcoleptic/alcoholic tendencies of waking up in random places, such as a wrecked car, jail, mental institution, a bed of a drugged underage barista, and an alternate dimension populated by demons spawned from his own damaged psyche. He will have to confront them by facing his weaknesses and insecurities, rethinking his marital problems, and the relationship between his role as alcoholic crime author and alcoholic husband, as well as lying to the police.
I realized I couldn't tell her what had happened in the forest.
Punching healthcare professionals in the face, and shooting guns at a tornado. The game was made by Remedy, a studio from Finland. And of course, the game is about a spooky lake, because Finland has more lakes than vowels in its language. It was also written by Sam Lake, who changed his name from Sami Järvi to full Finnish authorities, as he is on the run for not liking Korpiklaani. He was also the face of the original Max Payne. And by Max Payne, I mean the maximum pain of debilitating constipation. Alan Wake is a linear, third-person action-adventure class warfare simulator. The movement is intentionally slow and restrictive, in order to have tense, frantic, claustrophobic combat that requires you to be very deliberate about the direction you move in, and to pay full attention to your surroundings. This is kinda like Dead Space, where you play as a humanoid can of sardines, slowly lumbering and awkwardly turning to fight off various illustrations from bootleg atlases of anatomy. But Isaac Clarke moves slowly due to the heavy spacesuit he had bought at a Polish bazaar. Alan Wake moves that way because he is an out-of-shape hipster, developing asthma after running for just 10 seconds, just to get to all of the free coffee in the 100 thermoses scattered around the game. For finding all of the thermoses, you get rewarded with nothing. And with a framed picture of Sam Lake. Just like the Dead Space man is haunted by necromorphs, Alan Wake faces completely different, terrifying monsters, such as rural Americans employed in the tourism industry, who torment him by giving him advice, spreading awareness of the occupational hazards of the working class, spreading a wholesome message of empathy in the workplace, and radicalizing him with speciesist propaganda. Pets aren't farm animals? Wait, so I can't milk my cat and my dog? But Alan takes none of this. Armed with a gun, a flashlight, or as they call it in Great Britain, Guy Fawkes but successful, and with coffee-induced hypertension, he matrix dodges any references to physical labor, asserting his dominance as an intellectual urbanite and refusing to acknowledge the struggle of the working class. Since Pacific Northwestern blue collars are nocturnal creatures raised in caves, they can only be heard after shining your flashlight at them. The light plays a vital role in the game, both gameplay and story-wise. All enemies are protected by the basement-dwelling troglodyte magic, making them sensitive to light, as the whole world is being consumed by supernatural darkness. Meanwhile, Alan regains health when in bright light, and lamps work as both checkpoints as well as healing stations. This makes Alan a glow-in-the-dark dinosaur, while the demonic rednecks are damaged by light, making them precious works of art. When we fight them, we use a revolver with the most raw and violent gunshot sound, a shotgun, a flare gun that's basically a rocket launcher, flares that work as emergency hillbilly repellent, and flash grenades widely available in most lumber mills, farms, power plants and summer cabins. Even if we lose our firearms often, they are widely available, as guns are the bedrock of American statehood, and if there were no shotguns in the vicinity of 100 meters from each other, America would just disintegrate into a vacuum. At some point, we find a longer flashlight that provides stronger light to weaken our enemies. Note that this is not realistic, as there is no correlation between length and quality. I mean, ladies, for the love of God, please hear me out! You might enjoy getting a longer flashlight, but you barely feel any difference. Trust me, during close encounters, what matters is girth, good flexibility, and knowing when to run away. We find ammo and other supplies in hidden spots indicated by bright yellow graffiti, along with some world-building messages and advice. Trust no one in the dark. Good wisdom to live by. If you go to a masked swinger party for Satanists, and there's a chance your sister will be there too. Unless you don't mind, because you're a warm-blooded male from Tasmania. Alan collects pages of a manuscript that contains some backstory, steals cars to immediately wreck them, tries his luck as an unlicensed power plant operator, watches himself on TV, escapes sentient deforestation, shoots a psychiatrist for doing his job, gets hit by tires, trash cans and wheelbarrows, as well as planes, trains and automobiles thrown at him by a blue-collar poltergeist, and runs around looking for a path that was actually right next to him. Well, this one's on me. And he partakes in a Finnish national sport. No, not hockey. I mean, solitary week-long heavy drinking in your underwear. And he faces the struggle of being a fiction writer, challenged by self-doubt and writer's block, as well as his responsibilities to his fans and publishers, which makes him consider maybe getting a new profession, like a gynecologist. The game is so groundbreaking and subversive, it has reverse product placement, as we drive Ford 2010 KMT which instantly crashes, find Energizer batteries that are so shit they last for like 2 fucking seconds, and TVs that get possessed by Verizon ads as soon as the place becomes invaded by evil darkness and tries to kill you with IKEA furniture. During our journey, we encounter different characters that inhabit Bright Falls, a surreal place where every single person reads books.
You've read me!
Oh, sure. You're a pretty good writer. A little heavy on the metaphors, maybe.
Barry is a beer-bellied hybrid of Jar Jar Binks and Harvey Weinstein, which naturally makes him Alan's best friend and also his literary agent. Fuck! He helps us in our adventure by suggesting to get shit-faced with unlabeled booze while inside a creepy house surrounded by angry mob, as well as carrying a cardboard cutout of Alan, like a Sun Yat-sen Tadakimakura body pillow, like the one I actually own. It's currently drying in the next room. The 2 elderly rockers, suffering from dementia in a mental institution, are a reflection of Finnish fears of being drafted to the nearest dinosaur-themed heavy metal band, as every adult Finnish man is legally required to do so by their constitution. Cynthia is the town weirdo / potential domestic terrorist, who always carries a lantern with her, and who single-handedly brought the entire American economy to its knees by turning on every single light inside a power plant. Lady, do you know how expensive energy is nowadays? Pat Main is a radio host who's simping for Alan and invites him to an interview. Alan says no, so he spends the entire game crying and being salty about it. Agent Nightingale is a federal agent with an extremely rare bone disease that causes him to name every single writer that has ever existed.
Hear me, H.P. Lovecraft!
Nowhere to run now, Dan Brown.
I've got you now, Raymond Chandler. You hear me in there, Bret Easton Ellis?
Get back in the cell, Stephen King.
He carries out justice by shooting unarmed civilians until he reads some of Alan's works and immediately gets consumed by cringe. Sheriff Breaker is here to show us that girls get it done and crashes a helicopter. Rose is basically a humanoid Twin Peaks reference, whatever, no one cares. Hartman owns a clinic for boomers and makes fun of gamers.
That's Emerson. He works on video
Elbow
games.
strike.
It's trash, of course.
He also argues that Alan is wearing a band-aid on the wrong part of his face. The environments are beautiful and very atmospheric. Serene landscapes with an ominous dark presence lurking around, which manifests in falling trees and tornadoes. Take that, environmentalists! The fog is everywhere. It reinforces the whimsical, dreamy vibe, as well as the sense of being lost in a strange environment. TVs and radios feed us metaphor-laced short stories. The otherworldly light and unexplained graffitis that try to help us provide a sense of being guided by the unknown benevolent entities. There are NPCs that help us, but there is also a sense of godlike higher presence that allows Alan to hold on to the light, which is surrounded by absolute, pressing darkness. That all tickle my fancy and evokes a warm, comfy feeling of watching Creepshow under a blanket with hot cocoa while a deranged maniac hunts me with a rusty fireplace poker. However, I wish the game would allow us to enjoy the scenery and the atmosphere more. But since it experiences an identity crisis and starts wearing a bandana to imitate Marcus Phoenix, it tries really hard to be an action game and fails. This is a problem I have with many horror games. Scary monsters lose their impact if they appear too often and become regular obstacles. Alan is being haunted by these supernatural, darkness-consumed people, and they come out of every single shrubbery so often they are no longer a mysterious, dreadful presence that terrorizes our life. So it's no longer a struggle for survival against these unique manifestations of a corrupted world, but it becomes a fucking Tuesday instead. Sure, abusing the working class can feel rewarding, but if you have to do it every couple steps, it becomes monotonous and stops to be fun, just necessary. Same with the game Condemned: Criminal Origins, where you run around beating up murder hobos with the entire Pompidou Center worth of gas pipes. So many times it becomes an example of a very inefficient method of pest control.
Is that a varmint?
Advanced Action Videos proudly presents Exploding Varmints.
Especially since the combat is very simple, weapons and ammos are limited, there is no point in experimenting with different combat styles. The game is terrified of letting us soak up the atmosphere, constantly throwing enemies at us. Sometimes we get bullied by the working class in interesting set pieces and cool locations. But often, they are just a filler, and it's nowhere near as good as the kind they put in Twinkies. I like to fuck my cat. And the game will not let us progress until every single lumberjack, farmer, and Nordic walking enthusiast gets his dose of 9mm at point-blank range 7 times. This pads out the runtime, making the game longer than it needs to be. And as previously explained in my flashlight argument, longer isn't necessarily better.
It doesn't matter! I'm serious!
There is nothing wrong with being a little bit of a slow-burning walking simulator. Don't believe the lies perpetuated by toddlers. They cannot walk, and it's nothing but a skill issue. Get good and stand the fuck up like a normal person. Just try to fully embrace the world building, okay? Cool watermill. Nope, poachers take you for a deer. Hey, remember Chuck Testa? That was a thing.
No.
What's inside this cabin? Nothing, just homicide. Look at this fine garden. Whoops, private property. Ominous farm. A combine harvester runs you over. Wanna ride a minecart? Here are some birds. cross a bridge? Here's a fridge. Road trip? Here's a school bus. Casual hiking? Fuck you! Maybe just walk in the woods. And then the game drops a fucking log truck on your head, filled with zoomy Sonichu black goo rednecks. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. Now, shout out to Jacob Geller's video on artificial loneliness. Go watch it, and if you're a game designer, take notes. Sometimes less is more. And less bullshit means more reasons to play. Ah, god damn. Alan Wake draws inspiration from many different sources, most notably Stephen King and David Lynch's Twin Peaks. Stephen King's influences are present in the theme of a struggling alcoholic writer who isolates himself in a lake house, just like in Bag of Bones. While Alan sees himself on the TV and wonders whether the missing writer Thomas Zane wasn't just an alter ego he had created, the dark half comes to mind. In that novel, a struggling alcoholic writer creates a dark and twisted copy of himself, which he later has to confront. A small, desolate, shitty town and inanimate objects coming to life also feel very Stephen King, and many tropes from his books are present throughout the game, with the exceptions of shit weasels, gypsy curse-induced weight loss, pedestrian battle royale, Jedi vampires, coke machines that levitate while 3 women menstruate indefinitely, dog possessed by a psycho killer, cars giving birth to plants, necromancy addiction, naked guy eating your neighbor's lawn, Holocaust denial, cleaning the house with your tongue, and that scene from It, you know the one. Do not Google Stephen King It's Sewer Scene Chapter 22. And as for Twin Peaks, also known as The Rambling of a Madman but with a budget, Rose the Barista is a carbon copy of Shelley Jackson, as well as The Bright Falls Triple D's Oh Dear Diner is a reference to Twin Peaks' The Double R Diner. Cynthia Weaver, the Lantern Lady, is basically the log lady from Twin Peaks. The entire town of Bright Falls is a tourist destination, surrounded by forested mountains, filled with supernatural events, and it's shrouded in dark mystery. Everybody knows everybody, and everybody is fucking weird. Some of the story beats are also similar.
A damn fine cup of coffee.
Evil doppelgangers, possessions, gates to another world. Also, it's important to mention the fictional TV show Night Springs, which is a clear parody of The Twilight Zone. I haven't watched The Twilight Zone, it's too old. It's boring.
Are we men dreaming of being butterflies, or butterflies that dream of being men?
Now's the time for some philosophy. The ultimate, epic gamer fuel, I guess. Alan Wake mentions Zhuangzi's dream argument, and it's one of the themes the story is centered on. Zhuangzi was a Chinese philosopher who lived during the Warring States period when China looked like modern Europe. But instead of tiny cars, the main export was genocide. One day, he drank 8 shots of pure mercury, in hope of achieving immortality or at least curing his alopecia. Instead, he got so ridiculously high, he accidentally created a religion. Then he fell asleep and dreamed about being a butterfly, and after he woke up he wondered, what if he is not dreaming about being a butterfly, but he is the butterfly, dreaming of being a balding Chinese man? Just like Alan, who is conflicted about whether he is creating the reality around him, including the mysterious writer Thomas Zane, or is he a fictional character himself that was written by Zane? Are you awake when you stop dreaming, or is it dreaming when you're truly awake? Are you tripping on shrooms, or are shrooms tripping on you? Zhuangzi felt so proud of his theory of subjective reality that he shared it with his bro Huishi he had met in PUBG. Those were ancient times after all. So Zhuangzi said, "Do you see how the fish are coming to the surface and swimming around as they please? That's what fish really enjoy. No cap, it's a bit sus. You're not a fish," replied Huishi. "So how can you say you know what fish really enjoy? Big yikes," Zhuangzi said. You are not me, fam, so how can you know I don't know what fish enjoy? Bop this drip. What does it even mean? And then they both died in a minor local skirmish which claimed 17 million casualties. The dream argument is also somewhat related to solipsism, another idea that Alan Wake flirts with. Grammarly told me it's correct to say that. It claims that the only real thing is our consciousness, and everything we perceive around us cannot be taken as granted, as we have no proof that reality exists, and isn't just a simulation fed to our senses. Following this idea of solipsism, we are the only real entity, and everything around us is imaginary and subjective. So if I say the N-word in the next couple of seconds, I cannot be held accountable because I am, in fact, just a figment of your imagination. Newcastle. The prevalent theme of the eternal conflict between light and darkness can be attributed to Zoroastrianism, an ancient Persian dualist religion, whose priests wore an outfit that could only be described as Protoss Smurf Templar, and it's centered around the eternal conflict between Ahura Mazda, the god of light, and Ahriman, the god of darkness and shamefully concealed anime figurine collections. As it was presented in 2008 Prince of Persia, which the supreme Iranian leader Ali Khamenei has officially confirmed on Steam to be, quote, the dopest and most debased recreation of Zoroastrianism. Ahriman is embodied by these cool shadowy ninja demons with tits, while Ahura Mazda is these fluorescent cotton balls that are probably radioactive and tend to grope your girlfriend excessively. Alan Wake American Nightmare is a spin-off released in 2012. It has a different tone than the original. Instead of mountains and forests, it is set in the Arizonian desert. No longer Twin Peaks, but Twin Peaks Season 3. The titular American Nightmare is what happens when you eat 16 McDonald's cheeseburgers and fall into a food coma, during which your consciousness tries to astrally protect itself, but instead gets dragged into the astral version of Detroit, where you get mugged by fifth dimension hyper entities, so you end up in a spirit hospital with 20,000 fractures in your soul molecules, resulting in your fractalizing medical bill, sending you so far into debt that it not only affects all future generations, but also drags a few of your ancestors down with you. And then you have to work that debt off by teaching time travel to Joe Rogan tripping on DMT. It is also a reference to The American Dream, a 19th century prank gone wrong, when millions of Irish people immigrated to America just to be made fun of for being gingers. In the game, Alan is stuck in a time loop, where he faces Mr. Scratch, his evil Sigma male alter ego, who lost all of his money in crypto investing, which pushes him to the brink and causes him to become a Twitch streamer who tortures hostages and tries to arouse cuckold fetish in Alan.
Your wife? Well, our wife, really.
Alan channels the strength from every soybean he has ever consumed and tries to defeat his evil Shadow the Hedgehog doppelganger. He does it by committing several acts of domestic terrorism, gaslighting and mansplaining, avoiding the cutest spiders you'll ever see, and trying not to get hugged to death by unvaccinated Arizonians, who, just like regular Arizonians, multiply under pressure and explode into a cloud of crows, shilling for Isengard. It is even more action-oriented than the original game, but also much less frustrating. There are many new weapons, but I stuck to using a nail gun and a crossbow, because I believe there is a unique charm to going medieval and going home improvement, the charm that guns are unable to replicate. But maybe it's my Europeanness speaking, as firearms were never invented here, we just throw accordions at each other. I made a mistake of reading the game on a symbolic level. I spent too much time trying to understand potential metaphors instead of taking the story as it is. So I will share my thoughts anyway. The disjointed story represents a creator's struggle, where your work starts as a web of ideas that are unrelated to each other, abstract, and they lack a common core. Connecting them into a one coherent narrative is challenged by dilemmas, as the creator needs to find and choose the version he believes is the best. But options are infinite, and the white void of an empty piece of paper provides no comfort. Just suffocating creative freedom. I am speaking from experience, as my creative process is basically connecting random, separate ideas into something that will flow and hopefully provide some value. As Alan is a writer, I identify with him, because I also like to indulge in my fantasies of a man reanimating the body of Margaret Thatcher with super advanced Chinese nanobots, just so she would pretend to be his still decomposing mom and yell at him for soiling his adult diaper, which makes him the happiest man on earth. And I would rather self-validate by calling it art instead of admitting some deeper underlying issues. I also believe that Alan's issue with his wife shows how perfectionism and artistic frustration can bring out our worst toxic character traits. That's my interpretation. Everyone else trying to explain to you the story of Alan Wake is wrong. I invalidate other people's interpretations and assert mine as the only real one. Solipsism style. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, then you're welcome. Subscribe for more quote-unquote content like this. I believe you can finish the project you're working on and it's gonna be great. By the way, soon after I posted my video about Hrot, my Facebook showed me this image. Trent Reznor, who made music for Quake, which inspired Hrot, and David Lynch, who made Twin Peaks, which inspired Alan Wake. Coincidentally, both games feature a possessed bulldozer that tries to kill you. I just think it's pretty cool. Alright, see you later.